going on, guys? So today we're going to go over the Buildcrafting article that Bungie posted today. I'll give you a quick kind of run through of the article in the beginning here, so if you don't want to sit around for the whole video, I'll just give you some cliff notes real quick and we'll go through it. So let's get into that. So let's get into that quick recap of the article here. So if anyone doesn't want to stick around the video and they just want a quick recap of what went down in the article, I'll give you a quick recap right now on screen of all the things that are changing. So real quick, they're going to introduce loadouts. So we've been asking for loadouts, I know, for a long time. They're going to start you off with 6 loadout slots to start. And in using the Guardian rank system, you can rank up and earn 10 loadouts total. This is going to be great for PvP, PvE, people do raids. You can have specific loadouts. Next, they're going to have a mod customization page in itself. So along with those loadouts, there's going to be a specific page where you can go and change all the mods on your weapons, your armor. You can just change all those mods at one spot instead of having to go in detail every single weapon and changing each individual mods. It's going to look kind of like your transmog screen there. I'll throw a screenshot from the article on screen here so you can see what it looks like real quick. Next thing they talk about is removing energy types for mods. So we all know that a lot of the combat mods and a lot of the mods we put on our armors, they have specific energy types like protective light. You need void to use it. So now they talk about that they're going to remove that entirely. So there won't be any void or stasis or whatever specific mods. It's all just going to be one mod system, which I really like. So now you don't have to worry about what type of armor you have on, which means, I don't know if they're going to get rid of that entirely. The whole, type of element on your armor. They didn't really mention that, but we'll see what goes on with that. Next thing they mentioned are the artifact perks. They said that in the artifact now, the current system, you have to, slot your mods into specific pieces of armor. For example, all your champion mods go into your arms. They said now all the artifacts not all the artifact mods are going to be passive. So now if you, for example, if you have a barrier pulse rifle mod in the artifact, it's going to be passively applied to all of your pulse rifles that you equip. It does not mean it will override any exotic perks. So for example, you have overload rounds automatically on Le Monarch, the bow. If there's anti-barrier bow in the artifact, it's still going to be overload on that exotic bow because it's intrinsically built into the bow. For every other weapon, all the other legendaries and other exotics, it's going to be great. I can't wait for this. You don't have to spend mod slots to use these champion mods. They didn't mention anything about the 4th column mods, like the damage mods and stuff like that. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Maybe we're not going to have those anymore. I don't know. We'll see. Next thing they talk about are champions. So they talk about how now the stunning champions are going to be different ways you can stun them with your subclasses. So for example, blinding a champion with like an arc blinding effect will now stun an unstoppable champion. Volatile rounds will now stun barrier champions. Jolting a overload will stun it. And they do give some other examples in there as well for stunning the champions. Of course, Strand is going to be also one of those ability types. I like this a lot. I think this is going to be great. We're going to have different ways to stun champions. Makes it so much easier for harder content. Next, they talk about reducing mod costs. So all those mods that, cost 5, 6, whatever, 7 even for your energy on your armor piece, they're going to reduce those mod costs. This is awesome. There's so many expensive mods out there. I can't wait for them to reduce them down a little bit. They didn't say what mods in specific, but they did say that's something that they're going to roll out with Lightfall. All right, next change is weapon type mods. So we all know there are weapon type mods like Linear Fusion Finder, or there's like hand cannon loader, stuff like that. They're going to just change it from a weapon specific to damage specific. So that means instead of having a hand cannon loader, you'll have your kinetic weapon loader and your energy weapon loader and your heavy weapon loader. So it's just one damage specific mod instead of having it per weapon, which is so nice. I am really liking that change. Next, they get into the actual mods themselves, and they do say that all mods are going to be unlocked for everybody who hits Guardian rank 6. They said that most players, if you've been playing the game, you've been keeping up with it, you're going to automatically be at level 6 come Lightfall. But for people who maybe they stepped away for a couple years, or any brand new players, they may have some grinding to do to get up to that Guardian rank 6. But once they hit it, they'll have all the mods that they missed out on. So really love that change. Get rid of, having to buy mods at the tower and stuff like that. Really look forward to that change. The next thing they talk about is actually match game. So the match game modifier, they said they're going to just get rid of match game entirely. Instead, they're going to actually focus on shield resistance. So shield resistance, they're going to look at, non-damage type specific weapons. So for example, your void weapon going up against a solar shield, they're going to kind of play around with how much resistance that shield has to any weapon types that don't match it. Instead of basically having match game be like a thing where it's like 10 times harder to break the shield, they'll just play around with that damage resistance on the shields and just get rid of that modifier entirely. All right, the next thing they mention is they talk about the new mod system called armor charges. This is going to be a little bit hard for me to recap real quickly for you, but basically I would just think of armor charge system. It's a new combat mod system, and it's basically like Charge of Light. So you get different stacks of armor charges. You can carry up to 3 armor charges. There are mods that can extend it up to 6 armor charges. Those armor charges will eventually, fall off after 10 seconds. So if you don't use your armor charge after 10 seconds, you'll lose one. You'll keep losing them until you have none. There are different mods that, of course, can extend that timer of how long they stick around. And there's a whole new slew of mods that we're going to get in Lightfall that will use the armor charge system. So we'll see how that works. And with all these changes, they talk about elemental wells. So elemental wells is one of the current combat mod systems. They talk about how the changes are going to affect elemental wells. It's going to completely change the elemental well system. So now instead of creating elemental wells, they're going to create orb of power. And it depends on whatever subclass type you have. It'll also create some other different effects as well. So they mentioned, for example, if you are on Arc and it's generating a elemental well, it will generate a ionic trace now. If you're on Stasis, it will generate a stasis shard. And then they do talk about there's these 2 other new objects, they still call them, for solar and void. Like for solar, they talk about fire sprite. And they do mention that there's a new aspect that when you grab a fire sprite, it will give you restoration. So looks like new fragments coming in next season that will play around with this new mod system. And finally, unfortunately, anybody that was using Warmind cells, they are removing them from the game come season 20 next month in February. So unfortunately, you're using those Warmind cells. This is the last season you can use Warmind cell builds. All those mods are going away next season. All right, well, if you want to watch, me go through the article, I'm going to go through it, scroll through it, and go into a little bit more detail and explain it a little bit more. Stick around and catch the rest of the video. You decided to stick around and look at the rest of the article with me. So let's go through this article, Buildcrafting Evolved. I'll put a link below in the description of the video. So if you wanted to take a look at it yourself or get more down into detail, go ahead and take a look at it. At the beginning here, they do give their own TLDR. So if you do want to read that real quickly instead of reading through the whole thing, go ahead and do that. First thing they want to look at is loadouts. So loadouts, they are bringing into Destiny and beginning of Lightfall. Honestly, I didn't think they would do this quickly. So I'm pretty excited that they're bringing loadouts into Destiny. They talk about right here in the middle. They say, you can see here that this Warlock here, here's a little example of what the screen looks like. That he has 6 loadout slots unlocked. They do mention that you'll get all 10 slots unlocked by progressing through the new Guardian rank system. Each loadout label has an assortment of colors, icons you can choose from Crucible, Raids, Trials, Gambit, and other damage types, and more. I really do like this new loadout system. Here's another little cool screenshot. You can see loadout slot 3 preview, and it gives your subclass with all the abilities. You can see your armor over here with all the mods on it. This is the armor perk right there. You have your weapons even up top with all the weapon perks on them as well, and the mod. And then right below it, they talk about mod customization. So this is where they talk about, basically what they want to do with mods. The whole purpose of these changes is to cut down time managing mods. Want to make sure you didn't have to go around and buy mods and stuff like that. So they kind of show off what the new mod customization screen is going to look like. So you can see it here. Kind of looks similar to like Transmog, so kind of similar screen. But you got your armor here on the left, and you have all the mod slots here right in front of you. Shows your artifact with all the other champion mods you've unlocked. Gives a breakdown of all your stats down here in the bottom right as well. And you might notice up here, you have armor and then you have weapons. So in the next tab, they actually talk about the weapons slot. So after you're done messing with your armor mods, you can just tab over. Boom, you got your weapons right here. in this list that you can mess with the mods there. I cannot wait for this change. It'll make it so easy to swap out mods on the fly, to build different loadouts. I mean, it's endless, and it's going to cost, going to cut down on all the time, like they mentioned. Instead of having to go and detail every piece of armor and put different mods on, I am really, really, really looking forward to this change. It's going to cut down on all that like dead time between like raid encounters and stuff like that, where everyone's messing around with their armor mods. Instead, they can just go, you know what? I know this encounter. I'm gonna swap to this loadout and do that one, stuff like that. Or hey, you guys want to go play some PvP? All right, let me just swap to my PvP loadout. Boom, instantly right there, done. I really like these changes, and it's gonna be so nice. I can't wait for it. So now you'll scroll down even further, and they talk about the next changes. They do mention some more things up here. I'll point out real quickly on these 4 paragraphs. So they talk about mod energy types. So mod energy types are being removed. They said they're not going to need them anymore, and it kind of reduces, the need for build crafting purposes. There's no point of having them anymore. So like your protective light mod, where it needed like void or any other of those other mods that need void or any kind of element to it, it's going to be removed. That'll be so nice for build crafting in the future. Talk about additionally armor mods that provide previous benefits to weapon types. For example, hand cannon loader will now instead provide benefits to weapon based on their damage type instead. This is huge. I mean, before it was like, hey, if you wanted to put a hand cannon loader on, you just had to put that specific mod on. Now it's going to be based on your damage type. So now you'll have kinetic weapon loader, energy weapon loader, heavy weapon loader. You'll have way less mods in your screen to choose from, and thank God. It was kind of annoying to have to do it per weapon type. So this will also cut down on a lot of time with build crafting. And they said that's not all, right there. Artifact mods are also being transferred to unlockable perks. They will no longer be socketed, but rather unlock the duration of the season once earned and are passively applied to your loadout. This is also another huge change that's going to save on some time, and they're going to make a lot of people happy. So before, what the current system is now, when you unlock an artifact mod, you would have to slot it in a certain piece of armor. So for example, if you got your anti-barrier pulse mod, you would have to swap it on your arms and put that in. Well, now they even give you the same example here. They say, let's say anti-barrier weapon is pulses. This change means that you'll no longer need to equip a mod for this, taking away that precious space and energy. All your pulse rifles will automatically have anti-barrier applied. They do mention that, if you have any exotics that intrinsically have a champion mod on them, for example, the Monarch, Divinity, they have automatic overload champion mod applied to it. Those will have their intrinsic abilities. You can't stack them or override that. But still, this is going to save a lot of time. You won't have to equip and change champion mods on your weapons all the time, and it won't take up the energy. We all know like unstoppable grenade launcher costs I think 7. So in the future, this is going to be pretty cool that we won't have to waste energy on our armor for these mods, and it's just going to be automatically applied. So I can't wait for that. And then they go on and talk about the artifice armor. So now with all those changes, you probably think to yourself, okay, well, what about artifice armor, right? With that extra mod slot you got from the artifice armor. So they say that starting in Lightfall, artifice armor will now have a unique mod slot that grants 3 additional points to your character stats, like strength, mobility, intellect, etc. This is awesome change. I can't wait for this change either, because now with this new mod system, making everything a little bit simpler, a little bit easier and faster, now I can put my artifice armor on, and I can also use that extra slot to give me a boost in some other, areas that I need some more stats in. Maybe I don't want to waste my armor slot for my resilience, and instead I can do that extra artifice armor slot, put some extra points into resilience on it, and that can free up some space for some other mods. I really do like this change, and I'm looking forward to that as well. Then we get into the next paragraph. It says game set match. So game set match, they talk about removing the match game modifier. So they say right here, to reach that goal, match game is being removed from high difficulty activities. The goal they're talking about is their idea to pretty much diversify your damage types, end up facing shields that you feel hopeless to break. That happened a lot with the match game modifier. You go into like a Grandmaster modifier or Grandmaster Nightfall or Master Raid your dungeon content, and all those activities have match game on it. So you'd have to match those energy shields of enemies you come up with. It could get a little bit difficult because you would have to match energy type shields as well as the different champion mods you have to throw on. So it could get kind of crazy. Like you'd have to work with your teammates and be like, all right, you run solar, you run arc, I'll run void, stuff like that. But now they're kind of taking away match game. Instead, though, they are still going to make some tweaks to making it to base on shield resistance. So they do say base shield resistance to non-magic damage types across the entire game, being adjusted to 50%. They did say it's similar to what Gambit has now, so just kind of think about that. If you're ever playing a game of Gambit, that's going to be how it is. And they'll probably do some other changes to it. Have different abilities and mods as well to mess with this. So, all right, and now we're going to get into the champions, of course. Champions will always be in the game, and they're going to make some changes here in this next season. So now, instead of only being able to stun champions with your weapons, we can already stun champions, this season with like, Void, Grenade, and whatnot. Now they're going to spread that over to your subclasses too. So they say, all right here. So while you still have a selection of anti-champion artifact perks available to you based on your current weapon selection, we're also adding the anti-champion options to your subclasses to complement your weapons. So they give some examples here. So barrier champions, Solar, Void, Strand. So use volatile rounds, can pierce barrier champions. When a player is radiant, their attacks pierce a champion's shield and stuns them. And Strand as well. Same thing with the Overload champion. They have Arc, Stasis, and Void. So damaging an Overload champion by trigger with Jolt can stun the champion. And then slowing down with Stasis can stun them as well. And there'll be a Void counter, I'm guessing, as well too. Suppressing. Unstoppable, same thing. Arc, Solar, Stasis, and Strand. So basically, there's going to be different subclass ways to stun those champions. I'm really looking forward to this because now we're going to have so many different ways to stun these champions that you won't have to be locked into specific builds that you have to use for Grandmasters or harder content. This kind of frees you up to use, really whatever you want to use. You can run like an all arc build in a Grandmaster. And you can just say, you know what, I'm going to run all arc, but I'm going to be able to stun unstoppables. I can stun overloads with my arc abilities. I could also have whatever, artifact mods there were. I don't have to equip them. I can just throw on one of those weapons as well. So there's a lot of different ways to stun champions. It's going to free up and make different builds that we can use in harder level content. So really like this change as well. So let's get down to armor charge mods. Armor charge mods, you have, they're talking about this whole new system with armor charges. So this is an entirely new combat system. I would think about this system kind of like Charge with Light. They do mention that. Many mods that once belonged to Charge with Light and Elemental Wells, mods now fall under a revamped system known as armor charges. So this is going to be a completely different system that they're changing up. Think of armor charges like they mentioned with Charge with Light. So, Charge with Light, there was different ways you can get charged, like stunning a champion, picking up an orb, breaking a shield, just killing enemies with different types of weapons you charged. Similar to this, they kind of go through and give some examples here about how you can get those armor charges. They do mention that you can only hold up to 3 stacks of armor charges by default, and then you can socket charged up mod to give you as high as 6. So you can have up to 6 if you use that charged up mod, or you're just going to have a default up to 3 armor charges. But you do have to be aware, they said every 10 seconds a stack of armor charge will fall off if it's not consumed by something else. So there will be other mods. They say players can extend this decay time by socketing the extended charge mod and the class item socket. And they give some more examples. So like Font of Wisdom in the head socket provide a bonus gain to intellect while you have any armor charge active. So there's going to be different ways to extend those armor charges and use them. And this is a whole new system, so I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of new mods that we're going to be able to play around with. They do mention also too, like Powerful Friends, Radiant Light, you can see time dilation, stuff like that. They'll modify the armor charge system and provide you a specific benefit while you have an armor charge. So that will be interesting. I don't know if Charged with Light or Powerful Friends and Radiant Light are going to give you that plus 20 strength and plus 20 mobility anymore. We'll see how they change those. And then the big thing is finishers will now consume armor charges and not dip into your super energy. So there were some of those mods there that would consume your super whenever you use the finisher. So for example, there was a mod where, or I don't know if we still have it or not, but you would use a finisher on an enemy. It would consume part of your super, but it would give you special ammo in return. So now they're instead going to make it, you just use as an armor charge. I really like that change because using up the super energy kind of put me away from those mods. I didn't want to use them as much. So I really do like this change, and I can't wait for that change to come through. And then they get into elemental wells. So they mentioned Charged with Light and all these armor charges. So now what about elemental wells, right? So elemental wells, instead of being focused, it said right here, elemental wells are being changed to instead focus on orbs of power. Some aspects of elemental wells aren't going away entirely. Instead of creating elemental wells, each subclass will now create damage type specific spawned objects. Whew, that's a mouthful. Damage type specific spawned objects. Jesus. All right, so basically instead of spawning in elemental wells, like if you're on Arc, you're going to get ionic traces, stasis shards on stasis. Strand will have its own thing. And then they introduced two new things here: fire sprites for solar, void breaches for void. Those are just two new little things. I'm guessing it's going to be similar looking to elemental wells. You just walk over and pick them up, I'm guessing. And they talk about, the ability to spawn these objects will not come from the armor mods, but from your subclass instead. For example, while the Ember of Tempering Fragment is active for solar hunters, it will now create a fire sprite when you defeat an enemy with a solar weapon. And then they also give even more example that there will be a new Ember of Mercy Fragment. When you pick up a fire sprite, it'll give you restoration. So that's interesting. We're going to have new fragments that are going to mess with this whole new elemental well system. And we're going to have new stuff like a way to get restoration from getting a fire sprite. I'm going to be really curious to see how this is going to work. Are we going to go back to restoration builds that were kind of out of hand with Solar 3.0? How is Strand going to play into this? So we'll see. This is going to be pretty crazy, and I can't wait. Next, they talk about the final thing here is they talk about the balancing act. All these different new systems, armor charges, blah, blah, blah. They talk about all that in this paragraph. But they end it on a sour note. And they do say, as an example of mods that aren't coming along for the ride, Warmind cells. They're a relic of a different time, and they've been nerfed in the past. They had a good run, but these mods will be depreciated and no longer available in Season 20. It's kind of sad to see those go. I had a lot of good memories with the Warmind cells and all the crazy stuff we used to be able to do with them, until they got eventually nerfed over and over again. But you know what? I think it was a long time coming. I don't think we're going to miss Warmind cells, to be honest, with the new changes to these mods and the loadouts and everything. We're going to have plenty of toys to play with, especially with Strand coming. So I'm really looking forward to all these changes. Somebody had to bite the bullet, and that was Warmind cells, unfortunately. But one thing I do find kind of funny is that they gave us Season 19, which was focused around bringing back the Ikelos weapons that create Warmind cells, and then the next season after, Season 20, they get rid of the Warmind cells. So kind of a funny little thing, but you know what? Hey, it's for the greater good. Something had to go, and I don't really see that many people using those anymore, so it is what it is. And I'm excited for this new mod system, and that is your article here. If you, like I said, if you want to look through it yourself, I'll put a link to it in the description below. Buildcrafting Evolved. And let me know in the comments what you think. What are you excited for in this new mod system? If you're excited for the loadouts, for the new mods, armor charges, whatever. Also, just let me know if you think of any new builds that are going to come out of this. What are you excited to use? I'm personally excited for Strand and to see how that's going to mess with the system. Just like when Stasis first came out, we all know how crazy PvP was, and the Strand will definitely do the same thing. So, yeah, really excited to see what's happening. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I will see y'all in the next video.